There's one particular story. I got a phone call from a family. Their son had fallen out of a tree, fractured his back, and he was bedridden. Now in the hospital, they wanted to do surgery, and they said no to surgery. Got to the house, and sure enough, he had an MRI, and he fractured like T5 or T6, and he was essentially paralyzed from that part down. So this kid is literally in his bed, prone, for 3 months. He was afraid to move. And come on, you and I know enough about anatomy. I said, listen, sit up. I kid you not, he fractured T6. At that point in time, there had been some calcification, some scar tissue. Like the body was doing what it can to try to protect that area, short of him having a surgery. And I'm like, all right, God, what do I do? He's like, I didn't bring you this far to walk in fear, operate fear. I want you to lay your hands on the fracture site, and I want you to adjust it. And I did. We went from living in fear, prone for 3 months, to sitting up, to getting a wheelchair, to getting a job, to having a family.
Well, welcome to the Vitalistic Voice. I'm Dr. Colin Elkin, and I'm so excited today, and I'm looking forward to hearing this story. And I got to tell you a little bit of background about our guest today. So Dr. Jim Olszewski, I got to meet him in a roundabout way. Our sons together graduated from Life Chiropractic College just in the last couple of years. And his son, Dr. Malachi, who's an extremely sharp young man, has started a practice, and we've been helping him with his practice and marketing for him. And he's done incredibly well over the last 8, 9, 10 months of just opening his practice. And through that transition, I had a chance to meet his dad. Dr. O, as we affectionately call him, Dr. Jim Olszewski is our guest today, and I'm learning more about his transition into chiropractic and his growth and evolution in the profession. And I'm so excited to hear this story. So Dr. O, thanks for being with us today.
It's an honor. I really appreciate that. I love sharing the background as to how I became a chiropractor, because it is unique and it is interesting how I came to this profession. It's funny, I had gone to college on an ROTC, so the Army paid for my college. And, with them paying for my school, I didn't think much about what I wanted to do, but there's something about like anatomy and biology that I really, really loved. Like it really attracted me, but I had no clue what I wanted. I was going to go in the Army for 4 years. I was obligated to that. They paid for my school. In my senior year, I tore my ACL, and the Army says, you know what, we don't want a soldier with a reconstructed ACL. So they said, listen, you don't have to serve. I had a degree in biology. I did not have to go in the Army. I had not applied for any grad schools or any jobs. So, well, funny thing is, I say sadly because I went back home and took a job at the local hospital. You figure biology, something in the lab, that kind of meshes. I'll get a job in the lab. Well, funny thing is, I couldn't get a job in the lab because I didn't have a lab technician degree. I had a 4th degree in biology. So they offered me a job drawing blood. Right out of college, I was a phlebotomist. I was drawing blood in a hospital setting. And here's what's really crazy about this. It's funny how God works. He had to show me what I didn't want before he showed me what I needed or what I wanted. So I worked in a hospital for 10 months. And as a phlebotomist, I would go to all areas of the hospital, essentially sticking people, drawing blood for whatever lab test they were running at the time. But I would go to the ER, I would go to the NICU, I would go to the nursery, I would go to the old folks home across the street. I mean, I was sticking people left and right. But I'm very, very, I pay attention to my environment and my surroundings, and the things that I saw in the hospital setting. Now, this is before I knew anything about chiropractic, about vitalistic care. My parents didn't take me to a chiropractor. They didn't do any of that. But what I heard and saw, really broke my heart. People were sick all the time. They'd leave the hospital sick, come back in 1 or 2 weeks, sicker than ever. Because I would get to know these people on a personal basis. Hey, I drew your blood 2 weeks ago. What are you doing back in the hospital? Well, you're sick again. And the conversations I heard between doctors and nurses broke my heart, because it was never encouraging or uplifting. It was always gloom and doom. They didn't care about the individual. And I said to myself, I could never, ever see myself working in this environment, ever again. So ironically, I actually interviewed years ago. I interviewed for a job with a chiropractor in my hometown of Watertown, New York, trying to get out of this hospital setting. Well, I didn't get the job, obviously, but I decided at that point in time, I can no longer stay in this environment where I am upstate. I got to take my degree and I'm going to go down to Marietta, Georgia. There's a friend of mine down there who's in chiropractic school, but he graduated with me. We both played basketball together, but he was an art major. And here's this guy. I didn't care about chiropractic. I just wanted a place to stay. Well, it was a place to stay. So fast forward, I moved to Atlanta. He starts telling me about chiropractic. And for whatever reason, it just made sense to me, like this story of natural healing, natural health. Again, as reflecting on my time in the hospital, I realized, well, I didn't want that experience because I didn't like what I felt. But then thinking about my history and my family, my mom and my dad raising us 5 kids. I wouldn't say that we were like poor, but we didn't have a lot of money, and we wouldn't go to the doctor unless the proverbial, if your arm's not hanging by a thread, you're not going to the doctor. So we didn't go not because of any kind of chiropractic philosophy. We didn't go because if you weren't sick and dying, you weren't going to the doctor. Reflecting over that, none of my siblings were ever really sick. We didn't take medication. We didn't go to the doctor. I mean, sure, I think back then, I'm 55, so I probably had my 4 or 5 vaccines at the time. But beyond that, we didn't go to the doctor. And I saw a pattern with my family's health. Okay, so listen. So now I go to chiropractic school. MetLife for 4 years. I didn't appreciate the principle yet. It was all business for me. I met my wife. She'd already had 2 children. So I was a dad in chiropractic school right out of the gate. I didn't go to clubs. I honestly, I didn't do it. I worked at a restaurant and I went to school. So when I got out of school, I had no idea who I really was. Yeah, I had a chiropractic degree, but I didn't understand the philosophy or the importance of what God did for me. So let's just say that I had a poverty mentality. I was fearful. I took a job in Marietta for 2 years as an associate doctor. Listen, amazing mentor, but not the ideal situation for me. So I'm going to fast forward. So from there, Marietta, Georgia, 2 years, I'm not having a clue of what I was doing. God essentially took me and my family to Brazil. And long story short, I was in between a position in Marietta and Kentucky. I was up in Kentucky, just like really just discouraged. My wife was in Atlanta trying to sell her home. The situation that I stepped into was a PI practice. I had no idea. I interviewed over the phone for this job in Kentucky, not knowing it was PI. When I got there, it was PI. I was totally I felt horrible. I was at the San State Hotel, and I said, God, I need some kind of like door opening for me. So I got a hold of this church, and the pastor said, don't go anywhere. I'm going to have this chiropractor call you. This chiropractor called me. His name was Mark Miller. He's a graduate from Palmer. And he says, you know what? He goes, pack your bags. You're staying with me. So I went to his house. We sat up till 4 in the morning. And essentially this, he had been going to Brazil with Palmer graduate or students doing missions work. He said, there's an opportunity in this place called Manaus for a chiropractor. And you know what? I had nothing to lose, Colin. I mean, honestly, I was fearful, fear driven. I had a poverty complex. And my wife and I talked about like, listen, why not, right? I had nothing else going on. Why not go to this foreign land and, do this? And sure enough, that's what we did. I mean, not knowing the language. At the time, my wife and I, we had four kids, 2 from our previous marriage. We had 2. And so we had 4 together. And so we literally just packed our bags, went to Manaus, Brazil, which is Manaus at the time. Even right now, it's a poor city in all of Brazil. And we opened up the very first chiropractic clinic in all of northern Brazil, not knowing the importance of it at the time, because honestly, we were also missionaries. Like we utilized chiropractic care as part of our ministry in Brazil. I would do free clinics on Saturdays. We would go out to these churches, and I would adjust for 3 hours And at the time, I thought, well, really, what good is this doing? Because I had a separate clinic that people would come in and pay money for, but I count at the time, though, honestly, we were charging like 20 Brazilian dollars, which is maybe 8 or 9 American dollars. And but that was growing to help us pay our bills. Like we didn't get any money from America. But on Saturdays, we'd go to we'd be invited to these churches. We'd do a free clinic. And I thought, is this really making an impact? And then a guy pulled me aside, he goes, Jim, or Dr. James, he says, you have no idea who's in this church right now. That guy over there, we believe is a murderer. That one over there, she's a neighborhood prostitute. That guy there, we know deals drugs. The fact that they're in this church right now, because you're here, he goes, we've tried for years to get these people to come to church just to share the gospel. He goes, we can't do it. We tried everything. And here you show up to do your free chiropractic, and these people are just coming in droves, and now they're being ministered to. And I didn't realize the impact that chiropractic had, which, by the way, used to say, lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. All we do is laying hands on individuals, and these churches were bringing in people they typically couldn't bring in. And so that was our time in Brazil. Fast forward 25 years later, we went back in 2023 to visit and do some short, like we took Malachi and some other chiropractic students. And honestly, I was blown away. The local university now is actually offering a chiropractic course. There's probably 25 students in the local university in Manaus becoming a chiropractor. And half of them, Colin, were patients of mine 25 years ago. One guy, apparently, I don't know how he got it, but one guy in this group of students has the original chiropractic tables that we had to hand us, like we had to make our own tables in Manaus, because honestly, the portable tables didn't work because they would break down, and we had to make our own table. This guy has the first two chiropractic tables that I made, and I don't know how he got a hold of them, but he has them at his house, and he's a student in chiropractic school. And like that was our story, and we were there for probably 7 or 8 years in Brazil doing chiropractic and doing ministry work, and it all just meshed together,
That is so incredible, and I'm sitting here just smiling, and it brings me to a quote that BJ Palmer said, that you never realize how big an effect something you think, say, or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow, and you're a classic example of that. So I know you're a man of deep faith, and isn't it interesting how, when you can reflect back, how God truly had a plan for your life to take you in these directions that you had no idea you were going at the time?
Right? Yeah, you're right, because here's the reality. Again, I told you in those first couple of years, I was operating in just total fear and uncertainty and doubt. And when you make the decision to go to a foreign land, number one, and take your family with you, not knowing the language, you have nothing to do but just to allow God to take care of everything. We didn't know this, but the typical missionary, for what it's worth, number one, they go to seminary school. Okay, now I'm not a pastor, I'm not. But from what I realized, from what I learned once I got there, you didn't go to Brazil as a missionary unless you went to seminary school. Well, they couldn't believe it. These missionaries couldn't believe, what are you doing in Brazil if you didn't go to seminary? I'm a chiropractor. Well, how did this happen? I have no idea, but God opened up doors for us to do this. So to come to this country from where I just came from, which again, just living in fear. Well, now for what it's worth, I'm this 6'5" white American. Now, people, if you don't know Manaus is the northernmost city in Brazil. It's in the middle of the rainforest, so it's really inhabited by indigenous Indians who made it to the city. Right? They went to the city for more up to, this is a city of 2.5 million people, but I was like this tall giant of a man. Like I was, sadly enough, they almost looked at me like some kind of like rock star status. And so no matter what I said or did there, they listened to me. I mean, I went beyond everything that you would even learn in school. They told, I was adjusting people with leprosy. I was for what it's worth, okay? And this is not off the record. This is me telling you, I adjusted fractured spines. I adjusted. The cases that came to me in Manaus, they would never come to in America, and maybe even in Canada, for the fact of, well, they'd be told you can never go to a chiropractor. The cases that I saw were incredible. In fact, my only regret looking back is that I didn't document this more. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into, and then when it was happening, I didn't realize the magnitude of it at the time. Because again, I didn't really appreciate the philosophy yet. Brazil had to show me the philosophy of chiropractic before I became this different kind of individual as far as chiropractic is concerned. It got to the point where someone would come in the office down there and I'd say, well, what meds are you taking? I'd just take them, I just throw them out in the trash. You need to take that garbage. And they would never take it. And then I started to see their health transform. It was just incredible what I saw, because there was nothing to water the message down there, nothing at all. And so it kind of meshed with their philosophy. In the jungle setting, it's more of a healthy environment anyways. You're surrounded by the rainforest, by unlimited amounts of fruits. You've got the Amazon River that's full of fish. So they were already in a healthy mindset. You added chiropractic onto that, we saw incredible things happen. I mean, borderline miracles in that culture each and every day. And my confidence started to build and build. And I was doing we were doing some incredible things under the umbrella of God in that environment. And it exploded. It just exploded. I couldn't go anywhere. My family can go anywhere without just, here's the American chiropractor, and here's his family. It was incredible, the amount of how we received there.
That's so beautiful. And that's honestly, this is what I would love to explore in the transition of you in school. So, because it's not like you had some sort of miracle experience as a patient when you were younger that took you to chiropractic school. You almost went to chiropractic school by accident, if you will, just through a series of talking to your friend and being in Marietta. And then the transition from chiropractic school and getting into this environment and truly starting to see true miracles happen when you remove interference. And what was that whole experience for you now that you have a practice in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama? You have a very high volume practice, corrective care, subluxation based practice. How did that start affect you and your practice now?
So what I learned in Brazil, even the fact, listen, I was running a chiropractic practice in Brazil, not knowing it was even becoming a business. And again, on the weekends is when we did the ministry work, but also too, just the amount of the money that we were collecting. Let's just say the revenue, because it was a business. It paid for our living expenses, but also it got to a certain point in time where I almost kind of felt guilty. Like here I'm a missionary, and I'm generating a good source of income through this practice. And so we started investing into church building projects and digging wells. So it kind of trickled into that. But just from a chiropractic standpoint, when I saw the way people responded to chiropractic in that culture, doing nothing but laying hands on them, that's when the philosophy of chiropractic really sank in. And again, it kind of matches up with what the Bible talks about. And the whole principle is just the KISS principle, like keep it simple, silly. Their way of life was so simple in what they thought, how they lived. It's hard for any American, or North American to understand how simple life really is in those kinds of cultures. They don't need, they don't want. They just exist day to day. And there's an expression that they would use. A patient would leave the office, and I'd say, okay, well, listen, I'll see you in a week or see you in a month. And the expression was, se Deus quiser, if God's willing, then I'll see you. I'm like, come on, are you kidding me? Why wouldn't? Of course, God's willing. They literally lived the passage of the Bible where, don't worry about yesterday, and don't worry about tomorrow, but I'm just going to live for the here and now. And that was hard for me at first. But then as I saw these people getting healthier and healthier, just through the adjustment and nothing else, that philosophy started to build and build within me, that confidence and that courageousness. I mean, that boldness of just telling people the truth and again, adjusting. I mean, we would go to the leper colony once a year to do a free clinic. Now people think, well, in this day and age, like leprosy, yeah, it's still common in those environments. And you would think, well, like, did you wear gloves? I didn't know what to do. I didn't know about leprosy. Here I am. I showed up on the first time of this colony, and they were told that American was coming to do chiropractic care. Now they didn't understand chiropractic. They just knew that I was there to do something, and I just didn't know what I was doing. And I think part of what made that special was not knowing what I was doing. See, we think by knowing more, we're more beneficial to the individual. Reality is, less is better. And by me knowing less, it provided me a chance to walk in my faith more by knowing less. So I have no idea like what I was doing. I had no clue. There's one particular story about 3 months into our initial journey to Brazil. When we got there, I got a phone call from a family. Their son had fallen out of a tree, and he fractured his back, and he was bedridden. Now in the hospital, they wanted to do surgery, and they said no to surgery. And for what it's worth, they thought I would come in there and perform this miracle. Their son would be walking again. But I got to the house, and sure enough, he had an MRI, and he fractured like T5 or T6, and he was essentially paralyzed from that part down. What was really cool about this is that because he didn't have surgery, they fed him this line of BS. It's like, hey, if you don't have surgery and your son moves the wrong way, he's going to die. So this kid is literally in his bed, prone, for 3 months. And he was afraid to move. And come on, you and I know nothing about anatomy. I said, listen, sit up. Well, just by him sitting up alone, you would have thought the miracle happened because his parents were in tears. He was in tears. He didn't know he could sit up and not die. But Tom, I kid you not, he fractured T6. At that point in time, there had been some calcification, some scar tissue. Like the body was doing what it can to try to protect that area, short of him having a surgery. And I'm like, all right, God, what do I do? He's like, I didn't bring you this far to walk in fear, operate fear. I want you to lay your hands on the fracture site, and I want you to adjust it. And I did. And I'm not going to tell you there was a big audible. I'm not going to tell you that, the guy got up and he danced around. No, actually, he never did regain feeling from the chest down. But here's what happened to that young man with that one encounter. And by the way, I would go back to his house and I would adjust him over a period of 2 years. He went from living in fear, prone for 3 months, to sitting up, to getting a wheelchair, to getting a job, to having a family. And that all happened over a period of 5 years that I knew this kid. And so, the miracle, there was a miracle. This kid's life was restored and hope was restored, not because he could walk again, because literally someone came in and God just happened to use me. He could use anyone and said, hey, lay hands on this kid. And not only that, you're going to lay hands on the fracture site. And God, I adjusted that fracture. I did, right? I mean, it didn't matter what the MRI showed. I did what God told me to do. And hope was restored in this man's life. And so I'm going to say something that's going to be somewhat blasphemous. Okay? Here's what God really showed me during that moment. What's greater than the adjustment, Colin, is love. Because that man was loved by this foreigner, this American giant, this white man who would come into his house, because I took the time to show love to him, that was more powerful than the actual physical adjustment. And Colin, in all the years I've been back to America, again, I've done DE, head coaching groups, some of them. I've done all that and more. And what I can say and kind of sum this up is, as much as I respect the physical adjustment, it's the intent of the heart and the love that is more powerful. And that's what I tell my team. It's like, you guys watch me and my associate doctor Rob. We watch us adjust all day long, the physical aspect of it. But you realize that when that patient walks in that door, if you lay hands on that individual and you do it out of love, and maybe even a quick prayer or a word of encouragement, that is as powerful as a physical adjustment. And that's what I saw in Brazil. And I saw that even because there was nothing to take away from the pureness of love in the adjustment combined. There's nothing to take away from that. if they were on, if they were on medication, there's nothing stopping them from just me throwing it out and then trusting in me and then moving forward. It was an incredible experience to see that their faith match up with my faith. And the challenge in America is getting that person in front of you to understand, listen, I can tell you all day long about the principle of chiropractic and self-fixation, and I can adjust you and keep it principled. But if they don't believe, if they don't come into an agreement, then it's going to be hard to change their perspective and change their health.
You know, this is as powerful as any Friday night philosophy talk at DE, Jim. And you can tell, you know, and I can see you visibly getting emotional talking about this experience and that story. But this is what I really want to know. And I know our viewers, because I know many of our viewers have not had that type of experience. But that experience that you participated in with that patient and the love that you share through that adjustment, can you comment on that? That obviously changed that patient's life, but how did it affect you emotionally, spiritually?
Well, we can, for any of us who understand, how, God formed us in our mother's womb. He created us in His image, but then we get born into this world, and guess what happens? We get hurt, Colin, and we get wounded. And typically, it's the people that care for us that wound us the most: our moms, our dads, or some kind of coach along the way, or a confidant. And through these wounds, right, we start making these inner vows, and we start coming into an agreement with the enemy, not necessarily in a demonic way, but we don't realize that we're coming into an agreement with what the enemy thinks he wants us to believe. And so there was just a lot of going to Brazil helped me to break free from a lot of the bitter roots that I had developed over the years, unknowingly spoken over me and into me by my family and some of my loved ones and my teachers and my coaches. And honestly, we can't be instruments of God. We can't be true healers if we're carrying around these burdens or these bitter roots or these vows that we make. Now, people are like, what do you mean vow? I mean, Colin, you know this, but anyone listening, here's an example of what an inner vow is. My dad, never forget this. There's moments, I was in seventh grade and playing basketball. My dad had, come to the game after getting off of work, and I'll never forget it. Like, I had a bad game. I didn't play well, but this other kid on my team had a good game, scored a bunch of points. And I'll never forget this. My dad didn't know at the time. That night, he drove me home from the game. I didn't take the bus home, and I sat there and I was just feeling dejected because I played a bad game. And I don't know why my dad did this. He said, "Hey, son, had a bad game, didn't you?" Like, "Yeah, I did, Dad." He goes, "Well, John had a pretty good game." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "He had, whatever. He had all the points." I said, "Yeah, I tell you what, you really sucked tonight, Jim. Like, you really sucked, son. And you know what? You need to play. You need to play like John." And that was the end of that. That was that conversation. You know what? That stuck with me. You know what I said? I made a vow, Colin. I would never ask for my dad's advice or help again. Like, I said that to myself as a seventh grader. And wouldn't you know, years later, I never called my dad for help or advice. And what dad doesn't want their kids calling up for help or advice? And that's something. And thank God I was able to see that and ask for forgiveness from my dad. Because but it being in Brazil and just going through what we went through, because in that environment, you can't help but get close to God. Number one, even though we did speak the language, ultimately, Colin, when you learn a language like that, it's hard. You learn conversational Portuguese, but to have a heart-to-heart talk was difficult sometimes with me and my Brazilian patients and friends. It really was. And so I had to take that to the Lord. In America, there's so many distractions. In Brazil, that's as close to the Lord as I've ever been. I'm not going to even say that. Even now, I'm 55. I ask myself, where was that young man and the faith that he had and the perseverance? Because, hey, Colin, I'm a chiropractor in America. And sometimes, and you probably heard this, but sometimes I just say to myself at the end of a long day, and how many people we see, and I wish I was a truck driver instead. I wish I was cutting grass because, hey, that patient was a pain in the rear end. But I go back to that time in Brazil, and that's what really transformed my mind, transformed my heart, my faith, my confidence. And that's when I started learning about these valves and these woundings that I've been carrying all those years. And so the first thing I had to do when I came back to America is in order for me to become a better healer, I had to overcome these woundings and these hurts. And I just, this is just a side note, but my wife and I did a really powerful training called the Elijah House. And you and I are both aware of, warrior coaching. And Ed and Yuri mentions Elijah House during some of the trainings that we did in Warrior. It's very powerful, but it talks about these woundings and these hurts that we carry for years and years, and it prevents us from being the person that God called us to be. So through Brazil and through that one training, that helped me. I tell you what, I mean, the doors opened up. I sucked as a chiropractor, brother. I did. I sucked. I did not want to do a doctor's report. I never wanted to do a spinal screening. I was so fearful and poverty-minded. I truly sucked as a chiropractor. And here we are today, and this has nothing to do with me, because I've had a lot of great mentors, a lot of great people just pouring into me. But the man I am today compared to the man I was, it's like night and day. And Brazil was a good gap for me. Now, what about the person who doesn't get the chance to go to Brazil? How do they overcome that lack mentality, or that how they bridge that gap? And all I would say is this: is that we have to find out, right, where that hurt happened in our lives. Was it a mom? Was it a father? Was it a coach? Was it a friend? And we have to, first of all, go to that person. I've written letters, Colin, of people who are dead, asking for forgiveness as a way of just getting rid of that bitter root that I carried over the years that's preventing me from being the healer that I am today, or even that God was showing me in Brazil.
This is so brilliant, Dr. Gilman. And so I want to ask you now, from a practical standpoint, one of the privileges that I get to do is I get to mentor and coach a lot of younger chiropractors, or chiropractors who are perhaps struggling in the profession and not serving their purpose the way that they feel they want to. And this is brilliant conversation. So I want to know how you take that experience that you've had and the transformation, the personal transformation that you've had, your deep commitment to your faith, the ability to forgive people who perhaps have hurt you, and sharing of the principle of chiropractic into your practice in a practical way. How do you build, because you have an unbelievably great, skilled team at your practice. How do you share that with your practice members and with your team on a regular basis?
I think sometimes, I think we can, I call it the drip method, for lack of a better, the drip method. And what that means is it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, every time that either for my team member who's just been hired on, or a practice member who's coming into the office for the first time. Number one, I do believe that we need to plant our flags and not be afraid to let people know what we represent. Now, I might not do that verbally initially, at least to a practice member. To a teammate, I'll let them know exactly this is what we do and why we do it. But for example, and this isn't, I'm a believer. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. But in my office, I like to play praise and worship music. I put scriptures on the wall. Now, there'll be a point in time where I may share my faith with a practice member or a team member, but I want them to know what I represent as soon as they come into contact with me. And so I tell you, plant your flag. And this, if it's in the manner of honoring God, and not money, not status, not numbers, and I can promise you right now, God will see fit to send the people to you that He wants to be in your office. And that being said, once you plant your flag, you better have some 1-star reviews. You better, because I believe if you're not planting your flag, you're not letting people know what you represent, you're trying to be vanilla to everybody, then that's kind of like the Bible, lukewarm. Either you're hot or you're cold, but don't be legal because I'm going to spit you out. I want people to know exactly who I am. So if I get an occasional 1-star review, I'm like, hey, good, I'm doing a good job, right? Because I'm rocking the boat. I don't want to be vanilla. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, we had a young woman come in 3 months ago to our office, and immediately she said, I don't know if I can be a patient. Why not? And just, if you're ever listening to this, just understand that I'm married to another woman. What does that have to do with anything? I'm a chiropractor. I'm here to help you in any way that I can, regardless of who you are. For you to say that, I kind of joke. It's a shame on you. I love you. And as a couple of may sound me for the first time, this is how I talk to my patients for the first. I love you, and you belong here. Well, fast forward, it's been 6 months, and she's doing great. You know, her wife came in, and she's doing great, and she had X-rays too, and they see the walls and they hear the music. They hear me talk to people about, my faith, and they don't feel like this is a place where they're being judged, but they know what I represent. Plant your flag, okay? And then in doing so, to me, you got to pick what you want to do in chiropractic. And I believe in the kiss method. Keep it simple, silly. You and I are principal chiropractors, and this isn't about what you choose to do. I always tell people, I like chocolate ice cream. I'm not anti-vanilla. I just choose chocolate over vanilla. So for anyone out there who's not doing it the principal way, you do you. What that does, it confuses people. It confuses people as to what you really represent and why you represent that. So I try to keep it as simple as I can from day one, whether it's a practice member or a team member. And I build upon that. But I always go back to biblical references, though, because again, that's what defines me. And in doing so, what it does, it creates this relationship of certainty. And let's just say that when COVID hit, and again, COVID was different. We were in Alabama, and it was a little easier in Alabama. But when COVID hit, before it became political, about a month after COVID hit, I said, you know what, honey, I told her I need to sit down and I need to draw on my experience from Brazil. And I need to kind of put out a message to my practice members. And the message I remember in Brazil was, tell them every day in Brazil, in Manaus, they live through adversity. A third world environment, like nothing in their life is comfortable. Nothing. They don't have Starbucks to comfort them. They don't have pillow top mattresses to comfort them. They don't have central AC. Nothing in that environment is comforting. Every day is adversity. And you never hear them complain. You never hear them moan and groan. And I thought, I have to reflect on that. So I did a video. This is like, and this for a guy who never did videos, on the back of my backyard, on my pond. So listen, we're going to approach this the same way that Jesus did. He was the same yesterday, today, and forever. Nothing's going to change in our office. And that's what we're going to offer you to the community. I tell you, we had our 2 best years during COVID. It was incredible. Because all these years earlier, the ones that were already the lifetime members, I never wavered from my flag. I never changed my flag. So when adversity did come, they just knew a guy who was constant in their chiropractic was a constant no matter what was going on. So when COVID came, it was still a constant in their lives. And we attracted those who wanted that, and we kept those who wanted that. Now, there was a handful of people that probably got ticked off on us and did what they did, but nothing changed during COVID for us. Nothing. It was the same in the office as it was before and after COVID. And Brazil taught me that because nothing changes in that. From day to day, life is hard in Brazil. And to be truthful, when we went back in 2020, we were there for 10 days in 2023. We brought our son and some other students. We saw thousands of patients doing free clinics. You know what I thought to myself? I'm a wussy, man. Like, I've gotten soft. I've been re-Americanized. All the years later, I thought, hey, can I ever go back into Manaus and live there again? And I thought to myself, man, I don't know if I could now, because this is what happens when you don't stay on purpose, and you don't plant your flag, and you're not consistent with the principles that the Bible lays down, and so does chiropractic. So I was glad I went, because now I've had to toughen myself up again with that visit to Brazil.
So that actually you led right into my next question, is that so So what is next for Dr. O? Like, do you have a big vision for, I mean, you've got a fantastic practice. You're obviously making a great income. You have a wonderful family. You know, you have two sons now that are chiropractors. What do you foresee in the future for you? Do you have any big plans for you and for chiropractic?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that because my wife and I have been talking about that these last few months. There's something, and I've been asking the Lord to agree. There's something happening. I'm 55, physically. I mean, honestly, physically, I can tell you, I feel great. I never feel bad after a full day of adjusting. Like I never feel physically bad. I thank the Lord that I still have and as I'm not some kind of gym rat, and I don't have a six pack, but I do take care. But I feel physically great. Um, I've had the opportunity in the last year, for the first time, there were two, I could call them, we call them internships, whatever you want to call them. One from Palmer and then one from Palmer, Florida, that came to the office. That was the first time I have an associate doctor who I've mentored, and he's an amazing, amazing associate doctor, but he works for me. And so last year, I had a chance to mentor two young chiropractors. I truly believe that it's not really from a coaching perspective because Colin, here's what I've learned, and anyone listening to this, especially any young chiropractors, understand that in our profession, what really ticks me off is we're defined by, I want every chiropractor to be successful. Heck, you got to pay your loans back, student loans back, right? But you need to be successful. But I focused so many years, my value was in my numbers, my patient volume, my collections. Like that was my value. And God was trying to show me something different, right? Your value is what you do in that room when you lay hands on an individual. If it comes from your heart and not your head, if it comes from what you believe the Bible's God's calling you to be, and not some other person saying, "Well, here's how you do this," right? Um, and so I believe that I'm in the season where I can offer a lot to the younger generation, but not necessarily. Yeah, sure, I can tell you how to build your practice, but I can show you how to keep your heart where your heart needs to be while you're building it and not get distracted. I'm not impressed anymore by other people. And I tell people, don't be impressed by me. Don't. Okay. Don't be impressed by me because whatever struggles you're going to have, I've had. And whatever struggles you think you're not going to have, you're going to have. But I always said, don't be impressed. I believe I can offer a different perspective outside of the whole grow your practice, be successful, and all the other stuff.
This is such words of wisdom, from you, Dr. O, and I really do appreciate that, and I know our viewers would appreciate that because I do see it in the contacts and communication that I do have, is that there are so many chiropractors struggling because they base their success on numbers and collections and income. And you just stated it, you truly don't experience the fulfillment of service, the whole service attitude. And Dr. Sid was fantastic about that. Love, serve, and give out of your own abundance. But you don't experience that fulfillment until you can step into that realm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, in 2013 is one of our banner years. I'll never forget that. We had a great team, and it was a banner year. But I was driven. Now, listen, I'm not driven by money. I'm really not. I don't care about bells and whistles. I'm a very happy, content man. I don't need more things to make me happy. So money isn't. But it was a really banner year that year. And like once you get a hold of that, you want more of that. And I drove my team nuts. They all quit on me. And God really wrecked me that year. And when he said, he goes, I want you to let go of the numbers. Now, when I say let go, I literally let go. I didn't do another stat for about 2 years. And I know that's almost blasphemous in the chiropractic profession. And I'm not recommending a young like our son right now. Both of our sons our son Spencer's been doing this for about 2 or 3 years. Malachi's in his first year. I would not recommend that for them. You've got to have a foundation and a standard by which you can grow from. I got to the point where, like the members gave me affirmation. So now I didn't look at anything. Now my wife and I have always been good stewards of the resources God's provided us with. So that wasn't a concern, but I literally let go of all the numbers for 2 years. I didn't look at a single stat, a single patient visits. And it was in the same way, Colin, when we went to Brazil, you can compare this when we went to Brazil. Maybe God was preparing me for that. We went down to Brazil as a family of 6 people, 6. Other missionaries spend 2 years preparing. They rent this $10,000 shipping container. They pack full of their American belongings, and then they ship it to where they go. We had no clue that's how it happened. In 2000, when we went down, this was before 9/11, by the way, you're allowed to take 2 70-pound suitcases. We used Tupperware, or we used the tubs. You're allowed free to take down 2 70-pound tubs on any flight internationally. We took down 12 boxes. We took down 12 Tuppermade or Tupperware rubber containers for a family of 6. That was our beginning in Brazil. You know how liberating that is to let go of stuff? And we did this when we came back from Brazil. Of course, you met Heisman, our son, and a chiropractor. He's a chiropractic kid. He was born there. And so we went down there with 6. We came back with 7 because he was born there. So we came back with 14 Tupperware tubs to restart our life in America in 2007. And when you go through that, it is easy to let go of these other things. God was preparing me. God was preparing me to have, I think you would say, success, but he knew it would do for me. But he had to show me in Brazil how to let go of stuff. And so it's funny how you can look back on things that God does in your life. It may be years later before you see the reason why, and it was in that case. But nonetheless, so God had to show me that. And so the biggest thing I want to encourage these younger doctors is, I want you to be successful. You need to be, for the sake of our profession. But don't hang your value on your numbers. It'll happen if you plant your flag, you be the chiropractor that God called you to be, and you keep it simple. And don't be everything to everybody. Don't. It feels good sometimes, Colin, to fire a patient. And I'm not saying that to be. This isn't a prideful thing. You know, it's sometimes you have the solution, and you have you have what they need to reach a high level of health, and they simply just don't want to listen to you. This is the prodigal son. Let it go. Let him go. There's space for someone else to take that spot who wants what you have to offer. So don't get wrapped up into all this other stuff. Just let it go.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. And that's so actually I just wanted to end with that question, and maybe you can expand on this. Is that so there are a lot of students considering chiropractic school. There's maybe some students who have never ever been to a chiropractor before. And I'm going to tell you really quickly, I remember doing a talk at CMCC going back a few years ago, and there were 200 students in the lecture hall. Many of them came down afterwards to just talk personally with me. And I learned that many of them that were already in their second year had never ever had a chiropractic adjustment.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting there and adjusting nearly 60 people at the end of my talk at CMCC. But I would ask you, what would you say to young chiropractic students or people that are considering a career in chiropractic? And perhaps what schools would you personally recommend that they look into for specific reasons?
Well, so having 2 sons graduate from 2 different schools, I can tell you this, just based on what I've come to know about Sherman. Our son Spencer went to Sherman because he'd already had a family started, his wife, and so that's a very good family-oriented school. If you have a family, it's a great environment for a family. Okay, our son Malachi, who was not married at the time and didn't have kids, for him Atlanta was sexy, right? Sherman wasn't. It was the big city, and of course, you know, he was born in Atlanta, so there's some history to him. But for me, yeah, I guess you could say I'm biased because I still believe in schools that are teaching the principle and philosophy, and that's even getting more and more rare, Colin, keeping that together. You know, I think both of our sons had both great experiences, one with Life, one with Sherman. I think Sherman still probably is the school that's adhering to the philosophy and principle more so than any other school. But also there's a faith component that I really appreciate what Sherman is doing. Like the leaders have spoken about their faith and how it should influence, a chiropractic profession in their career. But for that chiropractor coming out of school is honestly, I believe that if I could tell one thing is stick to chiropractic, because honestly, what makes us unique now is chiropractic. What makes my offices unique is I'm doing chiropractic, and that's all I'm doing. That's all I have to focus on. It's all I have to sell. I don't have to sit there and be a chiropractor one day and a weight loss doctor another day and a stem cell injecting doctor another. I can just be a chiropractor. When you focus on doing one thing, you become the very best at that. You become the very best communicator at that. You become the very best salesman, the very best adjuster at doing what you know, which is keeping it simple and doing chiropractic. So these students, they don't understand that you can, Colin, I do simple chiropractic, and you know this, but I'm telling you, I I'm I do very well doing chiropractic. My philosophy is see families, make it affordable, and you know what? You'll be profitable. And that formula has worked for 18 years for me while I've been in America. It has nothing to do with insurance, has nothing to do with anything, just seeing families, telling the truth about the criminal, making it affordable, and you can be profitable. Our sons are doing that right now, you know? So keep it simple. That thing, the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. I don't want to use that because that's derogatory, but keep it simple, silly. That I would tell any student, you got to keep it simple. Keep it simple, don't complicate it. And if they're a believer, trust in God, and you know what? It'll be an amazing experience as a chiropractor. You won't regret it.
Well, Dr. O, I want to respect your time. I could sit here all afternoon and listen to more stories and talk philosophy with you. It clearly you wear your passion on your sleeve. And when you start talking about principle and start talking about your faith intermingled with the principle and how you serve and deliver that, you can see your face light up. So this has been an absolute pleasure. I can't tell you how much I'm grateful for you to be on the podcast with me.
I appreciate you, Con. I appreciate you inviting me on today, bud.
Well, we'll have a lot more conversation. So thanks again, and I'll look forward to continuing this conversation on further.
Have a blessed day.